Okay, a few. And of the ones that have read it, is anyone contributing? We got one at least. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about $1 trillion security initiative. All right, so Ethereum today, where are we? We have millions of users all across the globe. 500 billion secured by Ethereum. Just last month, we had $2.8 trillion of stablecoin volume, and all this is being facilitated by a diverse validator set of over 1 million validators, all secured with 35 million Ether. This is one of the largest public infrastructure projects probably in history, and it's working seamlessly right now. But the one thing that isn't up here is how much we've lost since 2016 for malicious funds being stolen, or funds being stolen. And we've lost more than, it's 15 billion? 15 billion since 2016. 2 billion of that is just in the first half of 2025. The threat landscape has kind of changed, but we do have some underlying security problems for Ethereum that are going to prevent us from moving to the next stage, which is why we have the $1 trillion initiative. So civilization, or Ethereum tomorrow, at least to me, is civilization scale architecture, which acts as the backbone of the global economy. We're not talking about millions of users, we're talking about billions of users. We're talking about trillions of dollars in values. We're talking about governments and institutions moving on chain, and the global economy going 24/7 on Ethereum. And so the $1 trillion security initiative is how we're trying to push forward to get us there. We're already seeing institutional adoption. This is happening, and it's coming. So what is the $1 trillion security initiative? So we launched it earlier this year. The goal is to kind of coordinate with the ecosystem and upgrade the security of Ethereum. And we want to do this in an open source environment where everyone can build on the work of others, not necessarily funding private companies to go make products, but making libraries and repositories that anyone can use, any team. The goal that we kind of set is we want to have billions of individuals, or 1 billion individuals who are comfortable putting $1,000 on chain, so 1 trillion. And we also want to have institutions and companies or governments that are comfortable storing more than $1 trillion of value inside of a single contract or application. And they're also comfortable transacting in similar amounts. That's what we're trying to get to. And in terms of who's on, or what makes up the $1 trillion security, this was started with co-chairs Josh and Fredrik, and I've recently joined. We also have ecosystem stewards that kind of keep us on track. We have Sam from the Security Alliance, Zach from Etherealize, and Mehdi from Sigma Prime, who are been really great for coordination and communication. And kind of helping make sure we stay the course, so to speak. And for us, for the $1 trillion security initiative to be successful, there's kind of 3 phases. We have this mapping phase where we take ecosystem feedback and we ask, what is preventing you from growing? What are the security challenges that you're facing? What kind of research are you doing? What's the most important things that we need to look at? And going back and forth with these organizations. And then once we have a good map of these, then we're going to go to the execution phase, which is where we identify some near-term milestones that we can do that will help accomplish and fix some of these goals, and also where we can allocate investments for longer-term projects. And the last part of this, which is also a very important part, is the communication. Like making sure the ecosystem, institutions, governments are aware that Ethereum is growing and becoming more and more secure, and is going to be the most secure blockchain for these kinds of things. So the first part, the mapping phase, this is the document that I was talking about earlier that a lot of you haven't read. Highly recommend it. It's a very good overview. We built this by talking to over 500 individuals, researchers, developers from client teams, institutions, protocols, stablecoin issuers, all across the board, and going back and forth over a long period of time to kind of distill 6 key areas that we wanted to focus on. And for those 6 key areas that we came, the thing that kept on coming up and up was user experience and wallets, smart contracts, specifically for security, the infrastructure and the cloud reliance that we have, and as a lot of people have been talking about, the monitoring and incident response. Issues with the consensus protocol. Those had the least concerns. I think we have a really good track record for the consensus layer, but we still have some upcoming challenges coming post-quantum, changes to the finality gadget, et cetera. And then we also had a lot of people talking about the social layer and governance. And I don't think I have a slide specifically for monitoring and incident response, but I do want to throw a shout out to Seal. I know everyone's been talking about them, but they have done amazing work in this area. Kudos and thanks for all that they're doing. So for the UX and wallet, the main things that kept coming up was, key management is hard, like the ability to safely manage your keys and restore, approving transactions without not necessarily understanding what you're doing, granting approvals and permissions to contracts with no expiry and with an unlimited amount of time. And the issue with this is, not only are you giving these permissions when you might not necessarily need to, but it's kind of hard to go and figure out, which contracts and which accounts have these permissions, and going back and revoking those. A really big problem we've been having is the compromised web interfaces. We're finding that these Web 2 debt is really killing a lot of the Web 3 security infrastructure right now. Privacy was another big deal. Wallets, you can track in the browser. They can see what kind of tokens you're using. For institutions, this might actually be a legal problem for them as well. And since different wallets handle their core behaviors differently, there's kind of fragmentation as you move around the ecosystem, kind of understand what you're doing. And for smart contract security, the thing that we kept coming up to is vulnerabilities. That's something that we've made tremendous progress on. Most of the hacks that we see nowadays aren't actually, due to a vulnerability in the smart contracts. I think that's, because of all the audits that we're doing, new tooling. I think AI tools are probably going to help out in this in the future. Another issue that people kept bringing up was the developer experience. Low adoption of formal verification, inconsistent testing practices. Frameworks might have not defined defaults, secure default standards. And then risk assessments for deployed contracts as well. So there's not really consistent metrics for evaluating the security of a contract that you're interacting with and its dependencies. And coming back to the institutional side of things, they might need to have clear lines of accountability for how the smart contract works in order to follow the law. So this is a problem for having the next phase of the initiative. Infrastructure and cloud security is also a big issue. The RPC and node infrastructure being centralized is a tough problem. We have very few RPC providers. A lot of these are hosted on cloud interfaces, which kind of centralizes the attack surface for the traditional attacks. Provider outages, ISP censorship, even things, so DNS having a centralized registrar, which is, can also be compromised. Phishing, where you just have off by one URLs, these small, annoying things to work with. Monitored incidents response. The key issues here were, if there's something going on, it might be difficult to reach the users or find out, or to reach the teams or find out, how to escalate this or who you should escalate it to. And there's poor incident response coordination. Seal's been taking over for a lot of this and helping large projects adapt, which has been really helpful in the community. And the last part was just social layer and governance. So worried about stake centralization, organizational capture of governance, regulatory attacks and pressure. These are kinds of the 6 things that we were most concerned about. And so we took those things that we got from the other client teams and we moved to the execution phase. So here's 6 things we can act on now. They're going to have real tangible benefits. I'll talk briefly about each of those. So for wallet standards, we have there's a beta up right now called Wallet Beat. It kind of borrows from L2 Beat. And this idea is that you can go through and see all of the wallets and all of the different metrics that they implement that are important to you. So, not only do you want to know, like, does this wallet have an audit for the current code, but maybe you wanted to use an open source wallet, or maybe you want to use a wallet that you can use your own node for. So you can control for finding the things that are important to you, and then also find secure ones. And this also kind of provides a lever for wallet teams to implement the really important issues that users are seeking. For smart contract security, we're working with some clients for producing a large data set, like a corpus of smart contract vulnerabilities that have been found. We're talking to audit providers and a bunch of different institutions to try to centralize these. And I think this is going to be really valuable for having an open data set for AI training. So it kind of removes the moat around researchers training models specifically for auditing Solidity. And this will also enable commercial companies that are already doing this to have a better data set for training their own models. So transactions assertions, this is a hot topic right now. It's still in active research. It's basically this idea of like, how can I set a simple set of rules for how the state changes for my transaction? And if these aren't met, then revert. So one example could be, I want to swap this token and make sure I get at least this much of this token, but also I want to be sure that all my other tokens aren't drained, right? And so there's several approaches that we're kind of researching on the side of this. There's the ERC versus the EIP approach. Do we do this on chain in the smart contract level, or does this become part of the core protocol for the consensus, or in the execution protocol? Still active research for this. Another very important one is the verifiable and decentralized front ends. If this is something you're working on, we're doing an RFP phase for this right now on the ESP, so please reach out. We have these smart contracts that are running on decentralized platforms, but these DApp front ends still rely on centralized hosting, and they're vulnerable to not only attack, but censorship. And this creates lots of problems in the space. A lot of the compromised accounts that we see right now is because the front end interface is compromised, and the users actually interacting with a malicious smart contract where they're signing transactions that aren't in their best interest. So if you work on this, it's a chance for an RFP. And then this was the single largest issue that was kind of identified in the mapping phase, and that is blind signing. This idea of, I'm signing for, maybe I just see some call data, maybe I see some structured JSON, maybe I just have a hash that I'm verifying on my wallet. I'm not really sure what I'm signing for. There's been a lot of work put into fixing this, to having a clear signing, where you're signing a clear human-readable representation of what's going to happen. There's been a lot of work by the community. The Verifier Alliance, I think, has like 8 million contracts that they've done TX decoding for the ABIs and verified that the contracts and the source match. There's been previous standards done, 4430, but we're kind of moved on to 7730. This idea that you can take an external representation of what some interaction is of a function and map that to a human-readable example. And the idea here being that if we get wallets to implement this 7730, we can have this open source data set of a trusted registry of all of these annotations. And that becomes really easy for smaller wallet teams to have the clear signing, which I think so far we all agree is one of the most important things for the ecosystem. You can also provide that with TX simulation, so you can see not only what you're doing, but what the outcome of that might be. And the last thing we had really for the execution phase was the wallet for the masses. This is something that's being headed by Mehdi from Sigma Prime. This is like the idea of your best friend's wallet or your mom's wallet. It's a locked-down, secure on-rails system that makes it easy to transact, and has a better recovery mechanism for non-technical people. Some of the key things that we ask for in the mapping phase, we're just like sending funds to usernames instead of having to verify these public addresses. And when we say verifying public addresses, reading the last four digits of the public address and the first four. We also want to have easy payments for goods and services, so good third-party adoption, and things like simple swaps, like basic applications that kind of lock down what you can do. You don't have to worry about getting drained. And kind of the last part about this is the communication phase, which is another really important part of this. And the Digital Studio team at the EF has been working on this along with Josh to kind of map out the things that we're looking at and show what the active research is, what phase we're in. And if you want to contribute, you can go to here and see, like, all right, this is something that I'm really familiar with, and we're still in the research phase. This is how I can contribute. Really, the most important thing here that the $1 trillion security initiative is it's an open source collaboration for the ecosystem to secure the ecosystem. Not putting it up to like private products and industry, but to come together as an ecosystem to make it safe for everyone. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities for collaboration. This isn't about telling anyone what to do. It's about creating a place for like builders to collaborate on the security problems that affect us all. If you fall into any of these categories and you think you want to help and you think you can contribute, reach out to us. This is a very important thing for not only us but the entire community. But one key takeaway from this, it is open source first. This isn't a pitch. Like, don't come and pitch your product, and we're not going to fund your private raise. We're not looking for commercial solutions, but community solutions to these community problems. Do y'all have any questions? That's all that I have, I think. Yeah. Do we have time for questions?
Can you please show the email again? Sorry. Thank you.
Oh. They're bringing it up. They're bringing it up. One second. It's $1 trillion security at Ethereum.org.
We have another question.
So it seems like today there's significant problems, as you've addressed in the presentation, around blind signing. Would you mind just elaborating more on those EIPs that you were talking about that would potentially fix them?
So I can at least talk a little bit about the 7731. I'm not fully familiar with all of the previous work that's been done, but this idea is that you have external, so off-chain representation of all of the functions and variables in a contract. And then for those functions, given those inputs, you have a human-readable like interpretation of it. So instead of like calling this function with a source address, a token amount, and a destination, it would be, user X sends, Y to Alice. User is delegating this to Bob. It's like a text-readable representation of what's happening in code. So you don't have to read this like awful JSON file of some hexadecimal and try to figure out what's going on. Does that answer your question? I think I got one more in front of you.
Thanks. And is the idea then with that to somehow integrate it into wallet solutions? One challenge I've heard a lot with wallet solutions is that there's often this tension between wanting to be able to update the wallet and to actually keep the keys safe in a secure enclave that malicious firmware cannot extract.
Right. So in terms of wallets not wanting to upgrade, I think we'll remove some of the friction there. We're going to provide not only libraries for this, but the repositories that link these implementations. And I think the pressure is going to come from, like we've seen with WalletBeat. Users are going to want to have this. It's going to be an important thing that requires you to, ascend to the higher levels from that.
Sorry, I meant for hardware wallets.
Oh, for hardware wallets, yeah. So that is a tough problem. Like not only that, but even the interface for which you can do that. I don't have the answer to that one, unfortunately. I think that's something that the industry is working on, though.